Hey everyone, CPO here, and in this video series, it's all about brakes on the 2019 Golf R. And this is video number 3 in the series, how to do a fluid flush and also bleed your brakes. All right, everyone, the very first thing I'm going to do here is remove my intake. That's going to make it easier for me to see and access the master cylinder, and also make it easier for me to get a shot with the camera. So I remove the cap to the master cylinder, and then what I'm going to do is just fill it up to the very tip top with the brake fluid. Now I'm doing a flush, so I'm adding in motul 600, RBF 600, and this is going to be my replacement fluid. If you were doing just a bleed, you could actually add brake fluid, whatever brake fluid you're using, add it maybe to the top or almost, and do the same process that I'm doing here, with the exception of don't fill the bottle. So the bottle, by the way, is a Motiv power bleeder, and it came with a adapter for my master cylinder, and it attaches to the main bottle. So you can have different adapters for different vehicles, but this should handle most of the European models. I'm wiping down the master cylinder just so I can see the level and make sure that everything is good to go there. And then I'm going to fill this bottle with a couple of bottles of brake fluid. I'm going to flush out the original. Most of the original fluid is going to get flushed out in the very first brake bleed, which will be the driver's side front. So filling this up, the key here is you don't want this to empty. You don't want to introduce any air into your system. I'm going to pump it up to about 30 PSI. That's 2 bar. 29 technically PSI is 2 bar. But the reason is because the manual, the service manual, actually says you need to do that so that you can get through the ABS hydraulic unit. And just make sure it doesn't leak down. It's a good way to make sure that, particularly because I just changed brake hoses, that I don't have any leaks anywhere. So while that's pressurized, it should hold pressure, and that's a good opportunity to go around and, like I said, check for leaks and just make sure that you're not squirting any fluid out anywhere now that you have the system pressurized. Now I'm going to start with the front right and go ahead and put on the brake bleeding bottle. This is a fancy bottle. You could do a Coke bottle with a hose or whatever, but I do like this setup. So the hose connects directly to the bleed screw and has a hanger there. Now on my vehicle, a 2019 Golf R, you do front left, front right, rear left, and rear right. So once I have the hose on, I can crack the bleed screw with a wrench, and you can see the brake fluid coming down, and then it begins to fill up that bottle. And what I'm looking for here is the color of the fluid to change. Now, if I was just bleeding air out because of the lines, I'd probably be done by now. Basically, I'm just getting the air out of the system. But I'm also changing the fluid. So I'm going to let that bottle fill up until the fluid color goes from yellowish to whitish, which is pretty much what you're starting to see here. And I'll show you a little bit better detail on that in a later part of this video. I'm going to fill up a lot of this bottle. This is the first go around. Remember, I'm also draining my master cylinder of all the old fluid. So I pretty much just filled up this first bottle just to make sure I flushed out all of that old fluid that was in the master cylinder. And I only have the new motul fluid in there moving forward. So tighten down that bleeder screw. And yeah, it looks like trucker pee, but hey, it is what it is. And then take that bottle off. Don't forget to put your little rubber dust cap on the bleed screw after you tighten it down. And then, yeah, you can take this. And what I've been doing is dumping it back in the empty bottle so that I can recycle all this fluid. And as long as you keep pressure in the power bleeder and make sure it's got a good fluid level, that you don't run out of fluid, you can just run around to all 4 corners and do this. So now I'm on the passenger front. Same thing. I'm looking for a color change. And if you're watching this video, you might notice it goes from a yellowish color to a almost clear color. And again, I'll do some back-to-back footage for you here in a second, which will really show that off. And that's how you know that all the old fluid has been pushed through the line and you've evacuated all of that and replaced it with the new fluid. New fluid's always going to be a lot lighter than used fluid. So in this fluid I have in here really isn't that bad. It's a really light yellow color, but there's a distinctive difference to the new fluid. This is the driver rear, and in this one, I'll definitely show you the difference. So it's going through, and I sped this up a little bit so you can see it switch to clear. Now look at me bounce back and forth, before, after, before, after, before, after. You can see the yellow to the whitish. That's what you're looking for, and you can see it happen. And if not, just, you know, dump out enough to where you feel like you've got it drained out through all the lines. Here again, this is the final one. This is the passenger rear. You'll see it go from a yellowish color to a whitish color, and then I know I'm done. Now, what I want to do is remove pressure, because I've got all this fluid now. I don't need any more fluid. I've got the fluid flush done. Now what I need to do is get the master cylinder to the right level. So what I'm going to do is I emptied out the fluid out of the bottle. I'm repumping it up, and I'm draining out fluid until I hit the top of the full line on the master cylinder. And basically what I'm doing is just pushing through what's left until I can get it to the right level, and then I stop. And so yeah, that is the flush process, also the bleed process with a little extra stuff. Once I've done that, I can remove, again, the pressure off of this by taking off that top cap. And I'll put a link to this Motiv bleed kit in the video description. But now I can remove that off the master cylinder and replace my master cylinder cap. And it's pretty much that simple. Put the thing back together, and we're donezo. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this series. I hope maybe you learned something from it. I do appreciate you watching. Anyway, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.